Hello, everybody. Boy, do I have an exciting guest. You know, 2026 marks the lunar year of the fire horse. Now, I've always wondered what these different symbols for each year mean. And today, I'm going to find out, and so are you. My guest says that the fire horse is some kind of unstoppable speed and transformative fire that historically fuels rapid change. I want to make sure I get this right, and bold revolutions. Well, those are two interesting phrases. I want to know, does that mean individually for each of us personally, in our relationships, societally, culturally? There's a lot to discuss here and unpack. So, my guest is Letao Wang. He is a professional astrologer and a spiritual counselor. So, welcome.
Hello, and thank you, Dian, for having me today. It's awesome to be here.
I am so excited to learn about this. So, the first place I want to start is every year, the Lunar New Year seems to have, excuse my ignorance, I'll call it a theme, a character, an animal. Can you start there and tell us what that's all about?
Of course, yes. So the Chinese Zodiac operates on a 12-year cycle, meaning that every 12 years we come to, we embrace the same Chinese animal sign. And in 2026, we are embracing the zodiac sign of horse. And when we say it's a year of the fire horse, we're talking about a combination of the element in the heavenly stem together combined with the animal in the earthly branch. And those two things are from I Ching studies, yeah? So when we say, for example, 2026 is the year of the fire horse, we're saying the heavenly stem carries the fire energy and the earthly branch carries the horse energy. And the combination of fire and horse makes up 2026.
Is there always an element associated with an animal?
So they change actually because there are 12 Chinese zodiac signs, but there are only 10 different elements in the heavenly stem. So they don't always match. For example, last time when we had the year of the horse, which was 2014, that year was the year of the wood horse. The heavenly stem energy was the wood, and the earthly branch was the horse. So it was the wood with a fire. Now this year is the fire with horse. And in 12 years later, that would be, so 2026 and 2038, in another 12 years, then we will welcome the energy of, the earth horse. So the heavenly stem will change to earth. Still, the Chinese animal would still be horse, yeah. So they change every 12 years.
Now, what is this based on? It's certainly been around a long time. So,
Yeah.
what are the origins?
So they are based on I Ching, actually. I Ching is a very, very ancient Chinese philosophy studies, basically. And so the ancient Chinese people believed that the whole world is, made up of these two different spheres, right? The heaven sphere and the earth sphere. And what is happening, for example, when we are analyzing someone's Chinese zodiac chart, they look very, very different from the Western chart. So Diane, I don't know if you have ever seen a Western astrology chart before. It looks like a wheel, okay?
Yes.
And so there you are seeing all the planets are scattered around on the wheel, and in the center, that's where we are, the Earth. And so the Western astrology is the study of the movement of the planets in the sky and their relationship with us. So it's a very sort of like an Earth-centric view, yeah? We are looking at the sky from the Earth, and you're looking at different planets' angles, or in astrological jargon, it's called aspect. But Chinese astrology is very different because Chinese astrology is very much about the relationship between us and our nature. And that's why the 5 elements in the sky are the fire, water, metal, wood, and also earth. For
Mm-hmm.
example, the symbolism of water is ocean, or could also be rain, depending on the yin and the yang, because each element or also has two. We call them modalities, right? The yin water and the yang water. The yang water would be ocean. The yin water would be rain. And the same for fire. The yang fire would be the sun. The yin water would be, for example, fireflies or a candle. And same applies to, let's say, for example, the earth energy. The yang earth would be mountain, and the yin earth would be garden soil,
Huh.
etc., etc. So we're basically, when you study I Ching or Chinese astrology, you realize that it's all about nature, the rivers, the trees, the birds chirping, and what is our environment, how is our environment changing? And in a way, they do actually look like Western astrology, because at the end of the day, when you're observing the planet in the sky, they are a part of our nature anyway. And the only
Mm-hmm.
difference is that, well, you can see a tree, you can touch a tree because it's closer to you, but probably it's very difficult for you to reach the moon in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, they're all a part of the so-called cosmos. Yeah.
Now, the fire horse.
Mm,
What are things we should expect this year?
mm. Interesting. So when we're talking about the year of the fire horse, I think the first thing that we need to do is to look at the difference between this year and the previous year that we have just, finished. 2025 was the year of the wood snake, actually, and the
A
snake
wood
energy.
snake.
Wood
Okay.
snake, yeah, yeah. By the way, wood. When we say wood in I Ching studies, wood means plants, okay, trees, or any type of greenery. Okay, when we say wood, and so it was the so-called the green snake. Okay, so that was 2025. And snake, the symbolism of snake is about shedding the old skin, shedding the old patterns, and achieving a sense of completion within us. And compared to the horse energy, the snake is very much stagnant because it's more about reflection, ending,
Hmm.
completion, understanding. It does not mean the snake is any inferior than the horse. Actually, snake energy is very wise. Even in Western culture, in the Old Testament, who told Eve to eat the apple? It was a snake. Why was the snake? Because the snake knows stuff. We
Mm-hmm.
know they have the knowledge and the wisdom, but maybe they shouldn't have told Eve, but they know. And so Snake Year was very much about learning our past lessons. And when we transform ourselves into the year of the fire horse, it's a little bit like saying that, okay, maybe this is a time for us to move from this stagnant, or let's say, put in a more positive way, this introspective or thoughtful energy
Uh-huh.
of the snake, to something that is a little bit more kinetic, something that is more speedy, right? Because the year of the fire horse has a lot to do with the galloping, has a
So
lot to
kind of
do with the
like going
movement.
from reflection to action.
Correct. Yeah, very much so. Thank you. Really hit the spot, right? This is about translating those old ideas from the previous cycle into more decisive action. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but here's a trick. A lot of us, when we leave the year of the snake, we tend to think, okay, that was a tough year. Finally done. Now I'm ready to move forward. The year of the fire horse is coming. But here's the thing here. The year of the horse cannot come to us without the year of the snake. We have to successfully complete the year of the snake. Then the horse can come, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
why, in sequence, snake comes first, horse comes next. And so, in order for us to so-called gallop right towards our manifestation, the first thing that we must do is to really master the lessons in 2025. What have we done? What kind of old patterns have we completed shedding? Let's put it this way. See, we can't really carry our old baggages into 2026 and expecting now we're going to go full momentum. It doesn't work that way. So I think this transition has a lot to do with, okay, Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, for this year, we're gonna, well, it's pretty much on the 17th, right, this month. Now, usually Lunar Year is either around the very end of January or the first 3 weeks of February. We still have time. Let's look at what kind of past lessons we have learned in 2025 so
Now,
that we
is this
can.
supposed to be an individual reflection, or is it a cultural and societal?
Absolutely both. Now, it
Oh,
depends on, yeah, for example, let's say, if you are the, well, we're not going to put names there, but if you are the leader of a country,
mhm,
your personal decision is going to be the society's influence.
mhm,
As the president or the CEO of a huge company, your personal decision is going to influence thousands of millions of people's lives. And naturally, that becomes societal, right? So this is very interesting. The fire energy, we say next year is not just it's a horse and ear, but it also is a fire horse. Fire
mhm.
energy has a lot to do with the leadership, actually.
Huh.
So, for example, even in the Western astrology, the first zodiac sign on the astrological wheel is Aries. And that is, Aries is known as the cardinal fire sign. Again, it's a fire
Mm,
element. And Aries is related to leadership. And so
mhm.
when we talk about the year of the fire horse, it's about, okay, as at an individual level, let's say I don't care about society, I don't care about my own life, that's okay. How am I going to take my own leadership to create the life that I want? This requires action, accountability, a lot of awareness. Now,
Mm.
if your position in the society is rather important. Let's say again, CEO, CFO, CTO, you run a company, with hundreds of people under you, or let's say you are the governor, right, of a state, or let's say you are president of a country. Ooh, that's even more so, right? The so-called leadership. And you're being given a horse this year, and this horse is on fire. Okay, so in a good way, probably this year, a lot of things are going to be, well, happening. A lot of, it's a little bit like we're spurring the horse because our
Mhm.
leaders have their vision. They want certain things to happen now, not later,
Uh-huh.
but I want it now. But again, horseback riding can be, I don't know, Diane, have you ever done horse riding before?
Yes, poorly.
Oh, good, cool, good, good. So you know the
I
feeling,
like
right?
the
The first,
almost dead horses.
so you know the feeling, right? The first time you do
Yeah,
horseback riding, yes, it's exciting. It looks cool, right? When other people see you riding a horse, right?
yeah,
But it's scary.
yeah.
And one of the things that always we say is that you will never want to stand at the back of the horse because they might
Yeah.
kick. And the horse kick can be deadly, right?
Yes.
So horseback riding is exciting, but also it's very risky. Same as the year of the fire horse. Yes, the universe is providing each one of us this. It's like I don't know, it's like well, would say it's a fire horse or it's a beautiful sports car.
Mhm.
Now it's filled with gasoline, right? And now you can drive, but don't speed. And that's the
Uh-huh.
thing. Right. So a little bit, I actually use this analogy with someone who was asking me, the same question. And I said, well, you have a child. And she said, oh, actually, my son has just got his first driver's license. I said, awesome. I said, what would you say to your son? And she said, well, enjoy, but don't speed, right? Be careful. And, something like that. So I think
Uh-huh.
the year of the fire horse is really about momentum. It's about speed. It's about taking action. But again, we gotta focus and we have to be extra perspicacious about our environment because our speeding could influence a huge amount of people around us.
What would you advise people for going slow,
Mm-hmm.
slow enough, but fast
Mm.
enough to embrace
Yeah,
your fire
right.
horse?
So to embrace a fire horse, one of the things I think we do have to do is, well, in a positive, way, fire rules are inspirations, creativity. You
Inspiration?
know,
Mhm.
yeah, inspiration, creativity, our passion, our enthusiasm. So I think it's important that this year we are moved by things that we are inspired by, that we're genuinely inspired by, and we genuinely are passionate about, right? This is about let things let our led by what sets our soul alight. Let's put it this way.
Mhm.
I think that's very important, rather than just using the so-called cold strategy, right? The so-called I must or I should versus I want
Mhm.
to or I love, right? And that's
Well,
very
that's
much
a
about
good
the fire horse.
differentiation. Very good
100%, right?
differentiation.
Yeah. And this differentiation actually comes from the last year's the snake energy. Maybe we have been doing the I must, I should, or what is the expectation for me. And once I complete that snake year, what kind of realization do I have, right? So going back to what we said earlier. But again, astrology is about symbolism. So this year, just always remember that you are driving this super fast sports car, which is red color. Again, it's exciting, but focus, because you can't be driving your car and chatting someone on your mobile or on your cell phone. That's what you say in the States.
Mhm.
And chatting with this and eating food, right, and not focusing on the road, and that would be quite disastrous. So I think this year it's a little bit like take the action to do what you need to do to reach your goal, but be patient, because you will
Mhm.
get there, but you don't have to get there in one day.
You obviously are very knowledgeable about this, and you explain it in a very accessible, intriguing way.
Yeah,
Where did this interest come from within you,
yeah,
and
yeah.
how has it altered your perceptions as you've moved through life, as you've learned more and more and practiced more?
Wow. There are several teachers actually that I studied. I was very fortunate to study under.
Yeah.
My first astrology teacher was actually a mythologist,
Was a
and was a mythologist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I met him when I was living in Sydney, Australia.
Mhm.
About probably we're talking about like more than roughly 20 years ago actually, when I was still a student.
Mhm.
And his approach to astrology was very much about storytelling. Usually, when I don't know if you have ever interviewed any other astrologers in the past, but most astrologers were trained in a very orthodoxical way, meaning that, for example, if you go to one of those very famous astrology schools, let's say London School of Astrology, or
Mhm.
Kepler, which is the most famous astrology institution in the US, very much you just have to memorize a lot of things related to the planet's movement, their
Mhm.
orbit and the definitions and the zodiac signs, right? But my learning in astrology is very much about storytelling. So my first astrology teacher would ask me to read Iliad and Odyssey,
Oh,
and by Homer.
that's a
Yeah,
story.
100%. Yeah. So he would say, okay, we are learning the planet of Venus, and her Greek counterpart is Aphrodite. You have read the story now. You tell me what you think Aphrodite or Venus means on someone's chart based on the story being told about her in Iliad and Odyssey. It's a little bit like that. So very
Wow.
much my understanding about astrology is all about the myth, right? How Aphrodite is perceived, how she behaved, right? What's her strength and what's her weakness. And naturally, when you bring that into astrology, they make sense. And
Mhm.
it's almost like even when in these days when I am doing counseling with clients, looking at their chart, and all I see is stories. And what I'm seeing is that the Aphrodite in them is behaving a certain way, and that's reflected right in their actual life, in their daily life. And so, to answer your question, my training in astrology, how did I gain those inspirations? Very much about learning stories
Mhm.
and reading stories. And for the past several years, I was also very fortunate to connect with a very famous astrologer in the US. He lives in California. His name is Gao Sasong. We actually have done a few collaborations on YouTube as well. He's very knowledgeable. It's amazing astrology teacher. I even see him as a historian, even though he says he's not. But studying with him also made me understand, uh, sort of like understand astrology at a deeper level, because I understood for him astrology was all about symbolism. It's all about the archetypes, right? Very union feeling, like Carl Jung, right? His studies, right? So those, because I was able to connect with those teachers and those old souls, which inspired me and made me who I am today. Yeah.
It's interesting because you talk about history, which I don't think we all know enough of. I think it's,
Yeah.
I love books
Huh.
because they keep a timestamp
Huh.
of whatever was happening during a particular period without it being altered by the internet, by someone saying, oh, well, let's change that a little. I
Yeah.
love good old books like the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yeah.
You get, it's a timestamp of how someone saw something and you see the world so differently. And I
Yeah.
love that you're bringing in mythology, whether it, whoever it is, whether the Greeks or someone else, and then adding the history to that, to your
Mm.
background. It makes you very rich in your knowledge.
I think mythology is such an important part of our life, to be honest. Some people say mythology is very far-fetched, right? Because these are the stories that happened maybe, thousands of millions of years ago. And some people might say that, but maybe they're not even real, right? Because maybe they're just all made up stories, right? And this is fascinating because the first time I visited Greece was back in 2017 or 16, roughly, well, maybe 10 years ago. And because I was there to see those ancient ruins, I wanted to chase mythology. So I went to Greece by myself, and I was in this taxi chatting with my driver. And I asked him, I said, you grew up in this culture. Like, you guys probably breathe mythology. These are the stories that you have been told by, your grandmother, grandparents, right? Your parents, your teachers in school, again and again and again, right? Those myths. Do you actually believe in them? And how do you guys perceive
Question.
mythology, right, as Greek people? And he said, you know what? I actually believe that a lot of those heroes existed. For example, he said, if you ask me, did Hercules actually existed? I actually think he did. But maybe the current version of the myth is exaggerated. So, for example, maybe there was a guy who was super strong, and he had to overcome a lot of challenges imposed onto him, either by his mother, well, his stepmother, which in myth it would be by Hera, or other people, and he had a very tumultuous life, maybe. But maybe in the story we said he fought a dragon, but actually in real life he fought a tiger. But we wanted to make him a hero, so we exaggerated the story. And so he said we do think that they existed, and otherwise we wouldn't have been telling their stories generations after generation. And it's very interesting when I heard that, because that just reaffirmed what I thought. I believe that at the end of the day, myth is actually just a history. It's the same as our history. It's just a very little bit far-fetched, right? When we talk about history, we're talking maybe a few hundred years ago what happened, which we could have those historical record to prove those things. But if something happened back in the Sumerian time or the Babylonian time, we would have much less evidence in how they actually happened and exactly what happened. But they are history. And so I think learning myth is a little bit like learning history. And we are also, even today, we are creating our own myth. You never know, Diane, right? Today, what I did might become a myth for people living, I don't know, in, 2,000 years later, my descendants. Maybe they will say, well, there was a guy whose name was Letao. He did this and this and that. Well, that's what I'm doing today, right? But to them, that would be myth. But to me, it's my reality. So I think
See, that's a very genuine
yeah,
reality to me, because I'm a big believer that we each go through life
yeah,
perceiving in our own individual ways. We're taking thoughts all day long. We're
Yeah.
merging them with feelings. Then we're adding all sensory data, how we
Yeah.
see, how we hear, how we taste, how we touch.
Yeah.
All these different things lead into how I'm perceiving this conversation, which is delightful, versus how you're perceiving it in this moment from where you are,
Yeah.
on the other half of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
From where right now?
Sorry?
Where are you right now?
Hong Kong.
Physically? So you're in Hong Kong. I'm in New York
Yeah.
City.
Yeah.
And just that alone gives us different perspectives of the
Yeah.
weather, how we're seeing today, whatever the date is irrelevant
Yeah.
for this. So I think you make a very interesting point that we could be each creating our own future.
Yeah. And the thing is that
Right.
sometimes I think that it's so important that we are actually aware that
Yes.
that we are creating the so-called myth, not just for us, but for generations of
Mhm.
people. See, maybe, we only live, I don't know, 80 years, 90 years time, and then, we disappear from this earth, right? But the thing is that our stories would be told by a lot of people, specifically going back to what we said earlier about the leadership thing.
Mhm.
See, maybe our leader will live 80 years and then, okay, bye, I'm dying. Okay, I don't care. I'm dying anyway. But their action and their legacy will be told through generations. Maybe even 300, 400 years later, people still talk about, oh, back then we had a king, we had a president, we had, I don't know, a prime minister who did this, right? And as part of history, and children will still learn about those stories. And I think if each one of us living in the modern days, if we understand and if we are aware how important those myths are, I think a lot of things would have been different.
That is a very profound way, deeply profound way to look at life, your individual responsibility, which I'm a big advocate
Yeah.
of personal responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Your responsibility to lead the best life you can, the best example you can give to yourself, to your children, to others around you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very profound statement of if we looked at ourselves as mythological characters of the
Yeah,
future,
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
what would
yeah,
be the stories you'd want told about you?
yeah. And that's also the intention uh, for me to create my own oracle decks. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, so for example, back in 2024, when my first oracle deck was released, actually, I have it
Yeah,
here.
let's talk
with me.
about those. I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So this is my first publication called Oracle of the Mythic Heroes. Published back in, I think it was in January 2024 by Beyond Words Publishing, and it was distributed by through Simon Schuster globally. When I was when I created this deck, my intention was really about teaching myths, and because I really want people to read myths and to really be able to connect those mythological heroes with each one of us, because each hero in this deck is an archetype. And of course, when we talk about archetype, it's not just, okay, you are this, right, or she's that. We may embrace all of them in different aspects of our lives. Maybe when we're in a domestic environment, maybe I feel like Demeter, right, the goddess of agriculture and the Mother Earth. But when I'm dealing with my boss, maybe I feel like, I don't know, Theseus, right, the king of Athens. And when I'm dealing with, I don't know, maybe my little brother, and I feel like, King Midas, the golden touch, whatever that is. So I think one of the things about learning archetypes is to really understand our psychology at a deeper level, who we are becoming and where we came from. And again, sometimes when we can use those stories and those ancient myths to use them as a guide, right, it will be much easier for us to embrace those lessons, I think.
It's funny you say that because you triggered a memory for me. My parents were very Catholic, And one of my mother's closest friends, who was a German woman who had just moved over from Germany, and they became very good friends, she gave me a plate one day and took my name Diane, spelled it in like 6 different ways, and told me, and she was an artist, and drew me as the hunter. And and I have to tell you, I was probably in 6th or 7th grade. It was such a positive way to turn and try to think of my life differently, even as a child, with a positive tie-in.
Yeah,
to
that's
a
the
name.
type. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because when you talk about hunter, right? Did you say hunter? Yeah. Well, that's the Roman goddess Diana, right? And she was a fierce huntress, right? From
Yes.
Roman mythology. Yeah, yeah. And I think that was a great experience, actually. At a young age, you were already you had this opportunity, right, to find a female deity that you were able to resonate with and to feel connected with.
Now I have a question for you. My very funny mother also, sometime when I was around 5th grade, there was no television in our house. We didn't watch television. But my father, when he would come home every day, right around 5:30, quarter to 6, he would bring the newspaper. And I would rush and grab the newspaper because I wanted to read, actually at the time, Ann Landers, which was the self-help column, which was funny, and the comics. And I wanted to read my horoscope because my mother said to me, of all of our 5 children, Diane, you are your zodiac sign. You are Pisces through and through. Accept it. And I remember thinking, my mother knows the zodiac.
Interesting.
So, what do you think about the characteristics astrologically in the sun sign that get tied to people?
So there are, well, of course, we talk about the sun sign, the moon sign, rising sign, right, and all these kind of things. But to understand the sun sign is actually quite straightforward. Again, symbolism. The sun illuminates the sky. It's the brightest thing in the sky, actually, right? So when you talk about the sun sign, you're really talking about where you find your illumination. And the sun in astrology, the sun in astrology rules our illumination, it rules our identity, the very core, right, within each one of us. And because the sun and moon are opposing each other, the yin and the yang, the moon usually rules our past, our childhood, our early childhood family, right, our inner emotion. So you can tell what the sun rules. The sun is about the future, if the moon is the past. The sun rules the path that we want to walk towards to find our illumination. And so that's the reason why a lot of us, when we are young, a lot of us cannot really resonate with our sun sign. But we can resonate with our moon sign more because the moon is where you came from, right? And the sun sign is actually why you're living this lifetime, because you live this lifetime to become your sun sign. And that's where you find the so-called illumination, where you find the shining moment. So as a Pisces, if you were born with your sun sign in Pisces, which I would assume that you were born around either the very end of February or the first 3 weeks of March, then that's where you find the so-called illumination or success. So what is Pisces? See, Pisces rules everything to do with spirituality. Pisces is the most spiritual sign, which is also the last sign on the zodiac wheel. Pisces is related to anything to do with art, music, design, colors, dancing, movement, spirituality, anything to do with also poetry. All these beautiful things are actually related to Pisces because Pisces has learned everything in the first 11 zodiac signs. And now Pisces says, as the vast ocean, which is actually the symbolism of Pisces, is to fish, swimming in the ocean. As the vast ocean, I embrace and I include everything. And usually when we say the 12 zodiac signs, we start with Aries and we end with Pisces. And Aries is the first day of springtime, right? Around March the 30th, 31st. And if we say that Aries is the energy of a young, let's say, like a baby just born, right? Because the first sign, right? Crying out loud, right? Out of the mother's body. Then the Pisces is how we die in our dreams. Because we have lived our whole life through the 12 zodiac signs, and Pisces is the most wise one. And they are ready to dissolve everything in the ocean. And then we are ready to start another new cycle with Aries. That's what Pisces people are they're living their life for, is to reach a very high level of spirituality and understanding and awareness. And actually, most spiritual teachers I have met, I would say probably half of them that I've met are Pisces.
Very interesting. And you nailed the birth date. Do you think do people resist their zodiac nature, their astrological nature?
Resist. I guess it depends on what you mean by resist, right? I mean, we're all born with our challenges on our chart. You know, there are, for them, certain planets might be, they might form a little bit challenging angle or aspect with each other. And usually that's what we talk about in a counseling session. For example, this could be about our issues with our families, difficult relationship with our mother, with our father. You know, there are all kinds of emotional challenges that we have to overcome. Most of them are coming from our early childhood, but some of them can also be reflected in our personal relationship with our partner, love life, marriage, or even with friendship. And so when we talk about those difficult aspects, now, of course, the purpose of that astrological analysis is to find healing. So that becomes a therapeutic process. And so usually when we're resisting certain things is because we're resisting the therapeutic process. We're delaying the process because the very first step of healing is acknowledgement. And sometimes, let's say in my personal experience with clients, a lot of us have been running away from facing certain challenges or certain issues because we just think that if we don't talk about it, it's never there. And so we bury that, you know, it's almost like in the deepest place, right, in our heart. And we think that, you know, if I don't know, it's not there. But eventually they're going to creep out because it is there. And then we will learn our lessons. And then we are ready to start our healing process. So yeah, to answer your question, a lot of us resist certain things on our chart. But the most important thing is we can acknowledge that, and then we become ready to start the healing process.
Now, based on that great answer, I want to tie together. How did you tie together your professional astrology with your spiritual counseling?
Yeah. So when I first started, I didn't start as a counselor. I started as a so-called fortune teller because, like what I said, my first astrology teacher was a very famous fortune teller. Actually, he was very good at making predictions. He was just that's just his talent. You know, he's almost like he was like a what do you call him? Like a psychic, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And so he didn't really teach me much about the therapeutic value of doing readings, but he was very much training me so that I can make predictions very, very accurately. And that's what I learned. But when I started my own business, I realized that a lot of times people don't really need prediction. What clients really need is healing. They don't really need to know what will happen, but they need to believe in what they can create. And when I came to that realization,
differentiation.
100%.
Very interesting differentiation. Yeah. Not knowing what will happen, but what they can create.
And create,
I love that.
And also, let's just be very, very honest. Even if there are certain things that we can't really create, but also it's important for us to know what we can't create and how do we want to live our life without that in a happy way. I think
Yeah.
because there are certain confinements and limitations in life for sure, right? I'm not saying that if we make an effort, we can do anything. I know that whatever I do, probably I will never become the president of my country. And that's just my limitation. You know, I'll never get elected, right? We're not going to lie here saying that, oh, if you want to do something, it will happen. Sometimes it won't. But how do I live my life without that? And I can still live a very fulfilling and happy life, right? So I think that's also a part of it. And when I came to that realization of really what people need, and that just kind of clicked. And so after about maybe 4 or 5 years doing just purely, predictive reading for people, I realized that I needed to further my education. So I went back to grad school, and I did my second master degree in counseling psychology. And then I got certified by Hong Kong Counseling and Psychology Society and Australian Counseling Association. So I became actually a certified counselor. Then I started to use a lot of the so-called modern day psychological know-hows and the techniques, and I combined that with astrology and the mythology and tarot. And
I love this combination.
Yeah, and I realized that how powerful they are actually.
Yeah. It's very powerful. It's very worldly, and I mean worldly as in the land, air, and spiritual sense. It's a big tie together.
Yeah. Because I do believe that sometimes we do have to ground the so-called woo-woo, because for example, I would have clients coming to me and say, I also want to become maybe a tarot reader, professional reader, just like you, right? How do I do that? And I always tell them that if you want to be a good reader, you got to be a good healer. So apart from just learning about astrology and tarot, you got to study psychology. You got to also study science, the scientific part, because our teachers, they have done, psychology started to develop pretty much over the past maybe 100 years or 150 years, and there are a lot of scientific research being done in the field. And so you do have to study that as well, because you can't tell people that, oh, I'm doing therapy for you, but I've never studied therapy. It's a bit like that, right? So because this is a job that we hold great accountability for people. You're dealing with people's mind, you're dealing with people's future, you're dealing with people's mental health. And I think that by combining the so-called the modern days psychological research and the know-hows together with the so-called woo-woo, it's gonna be a perfect combination, because there are certain things psychology can't resolve, but the woo-woos can. And I think there's such a great teamwork. You know what I mean?
Now, the time goes too fast for these interviews. So I want to know, what are your days like now? Obviously, you can't have the million people that hopefully will watch this episode can't all hire you for their
Yeah. So these days,
but what are your days like now? Do you see private clients? Do you lecture, talk about your books or other things you're working on?
So I would say 30% of my time is doing individual sessions with clients every day, actually, on a daily basis. And 30% of my
in person. Do you do them telephonically?
So if they are in Hong Kong, they're welcome to come to my studio, where I am now. I would say these days, at least 30 to 40% of my clients are online. So it will be a Zoom session. So they will be literally seeing me just like our conversation. So you can see me, I can see you. And a lot of sessions are done through Zoom these days. But of course, if a lot of them say, I prefer to actually see you in person, it's completely accessible. And so they're also welcome to come to my studio. It's purely a choice of the client. And the other 30% of my time, I would be doing writing, actually. And so this year, in May, I have a new oracle deck coming out. on May the 5th, it's already on Amazon for pre-order, which is called Legends, Heroes, and Villains Oracle, based on our human history. I just got my first copy as the author, actually.
Exciting! Congratulations!
Thank you very much. Yeah, and so these are already ready, but I have another book actually coming out in 2027 with a different publisher. But I can't really say the name because my publisher told me not to release it yet. We are just at the very beginning stage of the editing. So hopefully we'll be able to get this book out on the market next year, in about a year time. And so these days I'm doing a lot of the editing and the writing for that book. And all I can say is it's going to be a tarot book.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, your interests, Letao, are so fascinating to me. I felt like I had a free session thanks to this podcast.
Thank you so
Crouch,
much.
it's quite the experience.
Yeah. And sometimes I also do a corporate events. So in Hong Kong, a lot of major companies, they want to, they would hire me to do maybe a corporate event for them, doing a workshop. A lot of companies these days are becoming more and more aware, of their employees, spirituality, spiritual beliefs. And so, for example, literally last month, I did an event for Bloomberg in Hong Kong, which is a huge company.
Huge.
Right? So they hired me and another astrologer. So we were doing workshops and also individual readings for their employees at their annual event.
Well, I think you'd be fantastic with that because if we go circle, back to the beginning of this, where you talked about the fire horse and leadership and how that leadership impacts down into every one of those employees, and those employees and everything are out into society. I would bet that would be a fantastic corporate presentation.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, we just have to be a little bit more open-minded, and that's all what it takes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Letao Wang has been my guest today. This has been one of the more fun, well, they're all fun. But this is one of really special on so many levels. I want to thank you so very much. Everybody, I'm Diane Roussel. I'm also known as Silver Disobedience. This is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. My guest has been Letao Wang. There are going to be all kinds of links to his books, to his cards, to his website, to anything where you can get in touch with him. And gee, I highly recommend you do, because this has just been such a fun interview. And share it with your friends. Hit subscribe. Thank you, Letao. We're moving over to the green room. Everybody, see you soon. Hit subscribe. Share this with your friends. Thanks.
Thank you so much.